What is up, everybody? We are back. It is Monday, April 24th. We are 3 days away. It's draft week, NFL draft week. So it's an exciting time for us draft experts, so quote unquote, and dynasty junkies. So, as always, enjoyed by my father, Jeff. Dad, how was your weekend? Anything exciting
Um,
happen?
Nothing exciting, pretty slow, but glad it's draft week. Let's get down to the truth of all these weird ass rumors that are flying around the NFL right now.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll get some clarity on what's going on.
Hope so. Yeah, a lot of rumors and trade speculations and players changing teams. So yeah, it's interesting. I think as like sports fans, especially if you're fans of more than just football or one sport, this is one of the better times of the year. I'd say. I mean, you got baseball season going on, and most everyone's teams are still kind of in it because it's early. Maybe not everyone's if you're like the old Oakland Athletics or something. You got NBA playoff, um, NHL playoffs. You got the NFL draft this week. So besides, non-football season sports, this is a pretty good time of year before we kind of get to a little bit of a dry spell for 2-3 months. But yeah, we're gonna get into it. We're looking at some landing spots that that are not only realistic for some players, but also that we would like to see one or two for each player that we're going to go through. We're going through 10 players total, 5 of us each, just running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers. We're going to leave quarterbacks out of it because quarterbacks, I think it makes a little bit less of a difference of where you land. Like if you're good, you're more than likely you're going to be good. So yeah, these are both realistic / we would really like to see it in terms of their fantasy production. So we're going to get right into it with some running backs. Dad, start us off with your first running back, Bijan Robinson. What are some landing spots you're thinking for Bijan?
Yeah, Bijan. We all know he's the best running back in the draft, and I have a couple of spots for him. I think one of them is the Lions. The Lions have pick 6 and pick 18, and I know pick 6 sounds early, but one of the reasons I picked the Lions was because their general manager was kind of the draft guru for the Los Angeles Rams for a number of years, and he drafted Todd Gurley really early. And Gurley, he had a good 4 or 5 years with them, helped him get to the Super Bowl, and he was the man on the team. So that's what I'm thinking that for the Lions to turn the corner, that's where Bijan would end up. The next one would be the next possible location, and it's an early location or an early draft pick is the Falcons. So, Atlanta, obviously, their coach is a running coach. They don't really have. They got the guy from Brigham Young last year.
Yeah, Algier.
Yeah, Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson. But to really put him something to the next level and maybe getting into the playoffs, winning the division, getting into the playoffs, and that would be at pick 8. So that's where I think Bijan would end up.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see because everyone talks about maybe he's a top 5 player in this draft, but because he's a running back, people don't want to necessarily take him with a top 10 pick. But I think teams should approach it a little bit more of like why can't he be more like a Deebo Samuel than just like just a running back that runs between the tackles, like a weapon for your team that 10 to 12 carries between the tackles and 3-4 catches every game, and and that way he can last longer than 4 years or something like that. So, I like those spots, both those spots for sure. I'm going to get into one, probably the RB2 in this draft class is Jahmyr Gibbs. I came up with two. I think there's a chance Jahmyr Gibbs goes in the first round. If he does, it's probably going to be late in the first round. So I was thinking a team like the New Orleans Saints might be a interesting spot for him. Just, how they used Kamara. Not that I think Gibbs is a replica of Kamara, but, he can play that way in terms of, half his production is receiving and half is from rushing. So they've seen the value of a player like that. And, there's a spot for him on the Saints. Obviously, Kamara's still there. They got Jamal Williams. So, like Jamal Williams, let's just say Kamara's suspended or Kamara's kind of near the end of his career or whatever. You got Jamal Williams to do those in between the tackles and get that short yardage and kind of take the beating, kind of, unfortunately. And then you get Gibbs who gets kind of the other half of that production, maybe the more valuable touches in terms of receptions and things like that. So I kind of like that spot for him if he falls there. And then most likely he goes in the second round, I think. And a team that I've seen him mocked to and that I really love is the Dolphins, just because if he goes there, I think he's the best running back. And, obviously they have Mostert and Wilson, but I think Gibbs would be the better player of those, of the three. And just, I think the Dolphins offensively would use him perfectly. Obviously they have speed all over that field, and they add another running back who runs in the 4.3s, who can, it's like a track meet, so really, really, really like those two spots for Gibbs. Dad, you want to get into the next running back? Is Zach Charbonnet?
Yeah, just something about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's definitely trending upwards in the past. Over the weekend or late last week, his name was starting to come up a lot more. How he, could even slip into the first round. So definitely, you're right on the analysis. So the next guy. Yeah, the next running back I'm going to talk about, it's not strictly running back, but next guy on my list is Zach Charbonnet. So coming out of UCLA, he's had a full four plus years in college, is used to a lot of carries. So where did he end up? I say he can end up with the Dolphins. So maybe as a second/third rounder. I think he would fit in pretty good. The Dolphins already have two seasoned running backs, Jeffrey Wilson and Raheem Mostert. So he could, Zach Charbonnet could come slide in and get some carries and kind of share with the team. We know the Dolphins are a running team. Coach likes to run the ball, which and you got the two stud wide receivers, we all know. So that kind of opens the field up a little bit for the running game. The other location that I see where Zach Charbonnet could go to is the Bears. The Bears. So again, maybe second, third rounder. Bears running back room is kind of it's a little light right now. It's Deontay Foreman, who's not a bad back, and Khalil Herbert. These guys are okay. They're nothing to scream about or anything like that. But you can see Zach Charbonnet. This would help transform the Bears offense, and help Justin Fields be more of that polished quarterback, and having a real bona fide running game via a running back instead of the quarterback running it all the time. So I see Zach Charbonnet, fitting in pretty good there.
Yeah, I think the Bears is an interesting one just because, we all kind of assume Khalil Herbert's going to be the guy, but that's an assumption. And that's one of my things I'm going to kind of work on a little bit this year into fantasy is maybe not to make too much of an assumption. I'll give you a perfect example is like Gabe Davis last year. Everyone assumed, oh, he's going to be a stud, drafted him.
We all got screwed on that one.
Yeah, and there was nothing previous to last year that was kind of point. He had one big game with the Chiefs. He obviously had a really good like touchdown to catch ratio, but like there was really nothing. He never had more than like 500 or 600 yards in his career up until last year, and we just assumed he's going to turn into like this, his third year in the league, this 1,200 yard receiver or something, and it just didn't work that way. So just not assuming. Khalil Herbert he's had some good games. He's looked good. He is a 6th round pick for a reason. And it's hard to just assume like, oh, he's going to be a stud because he's looked good in 1 or 2 games. It just doesn't work that way. Charbonnet could come in and be the best running back in that on that team, especially if he's drafted 2nd or 3rd round. So I like that. And then our last running back we're going to look at is Devon Achane. Interesting prospect, very slight build, 185 pounds, I think, which, again, for running backs is very interesting. It's just not very common. You see that. But he needs to he's one of the guys where he really does need to go to the best spot, a team that's going to use him the right way of just using him more as a weapon rather than, a between the tackle running back all the time. And that is the Commanders. I thought about the Commanders. This is a team that I haven't really thought about them taking him until I was looking at this earlier today. They have the 47th pick in the 2nd round. They have a late 3rd round pick, the 97th, and maybe he's there. But I just think potentially the Commanders getting him, Bieniemy's there, who's the new offensive coordinator. He's a running backs guy. That's his background. And I guarantee you he was a big reason why Jerick McKinnon was so good with Kansas City last year. And McKinnon is the perfect comp to me for how Achane can be like not just a guy, but like a difference maker in fantasy. That's kind of his route of just like catching all these passes. I mean, McKinnon was like a top 10 running back for the second half last year in fantasy. It was kind of crazy. And, he only had 72 carries last year. So over 10 games, that's not a lot. Quick math is like 4 or 5 carries a game. It was his pass catching, his 50 plus catches. Obviously he caught 9 touchdowns, which is hard to bank on, but this is just the path for me. Like Achane, maybe he gets 4 or 5 carries, but hopefully he catches, 4 or 5 passes as well. And, 4 passes a game, you're looking at 60 to 70 catches the season. And I can see him, that's when he becomes a fantasy difference maker. So Commanders take him. They have Bijan Robinson to kind of be that in between. Obviously Antonio Gibson's there, but this might be his last year there. So I kind of like Achane going to the Commanders, meaning Bieniemy likes him. So, but yeah, that's our running backs. We're kind of move on to the receivers now. We got 2 receivers each. Dad, I'll let you start with Jordan Addison.
Yeah, Jordan Addison. So everybody's top 1 or 2 favorite wide receiver in the draft, coming out of USC, has had quite a prolific career at USC and the University of Pittsburgh. So he's pretty good route runner. He's caught a lot of passes in college. So where he would fit, we think, is the Los Angeles Chargers. They're looking for some possible new blood. One of their receivers, well, Keenan Allen might be his last year of his contract, and he's getting a little old. It's kind of hard to say that, because the guy is so good. But Jordan Addison would fit really well right into that team and look pretty good. Hopefully give they got a new offensive coordinator. So one of the problems that the Chargers had was dumping the ball off too much to the running backs, Austin Eckler. So Jordan Addison would help kind of open the field up a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I like that, definitely. Haven't seen that mocked very much either, him going to the Chargers, so would be very interesting. I'm going to talk about Zay Flowers, one of my favorite receivers in this draft. I really think Flowers, going to a team that has a weapon or two established already is probably where he's going to be most successful, where he's not the alpha, but he can still be like fantasy, maybe the best fantasy receiver on the team, even though he's not the main receiver. I originally had the Chargers, but for the sake of, just doing someone different, I guess, we just talked about Chargers and Addison. Going to a team like the Eagles, for example. I know the Eagles have the 10th pick, so I don't think they would use it there. But if for some reason Flowers falls to the 30th pick, he goes to a team like the Eagles. They obviously have two established players like A.J. Brown and Devon Smith. And that's where I think Flowers is going to flourish. I mean, not to play on the Flowers pun there, but where he's going to flourish as like a player. You can just move him around, use him wherever you want. He's not going to get the best corner on the team. He's just going to be a weapon. And then who knows what the team decides to do. The NFL changes so much now. They just shelled out a whole bunch of money to Jalen Hurts. They're paying A.J. Brown a bunch of money. So maybe they feel like going into next year, are we going to be able to afford Devontae Smith? And if they feel like they're not, and they just say, well, let's just roll with Flowers. We have him for 4 more years on a rookie contract rather than paying a bunch of money to Devontae Smith. And they trade him or something like that. I know it kind of sounds crazy right now, but it's kind of what teams, how they're approaching these receivers, where they're saying, well, we're not going to pay him, so might as well trade him and get something for him so we can continue to stay relevant, right? So just a thought there, a team like that, or even like a team like the Buffalo Bills who, are looking for another weapon. But I'll get into that with my next guy. I'll let you, Dad, move on with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Where do you think he'll go and a good spot for him?
I think a good spot for him would be with the Houston Texans. So Texans kind of lacking in some, really offensive playmakers. So they need to beef up their wide receiver core. They had Brandon Cooks, didn't like him, so they've traded him away. I know they have another guy coming back who had cancer last year. I can't remember his name. He was a rookie, but what's that?
John Mechie, the third.
Yeah, Mechie. So, but I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba would be a good fit, number 12 pick for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, they're you see that mocked a lot, especially pairing him with a quarterback if they draft one. Now there's all this doubt about them even taking a quarterback, number 2. But you do see a lot of mocks where they get a Stroud or a Bryce Young and they pair him with Jaxon Smith-Njigba at 12, which would be pretty nice in my opinion. So I like that. But yeah, I kind of mentioned it or spoiled it a little bit. Quentin Johnston, who I'm going to be talking about next. He's, we talked about a couple guys like Jahmyr Gibbs rising. I think Flowers is kind of rising. Quentin Johnston is falling. They didn't invite him to the draft, which I don't think is a huge deal, but also there's something to it because they're obviously in communication with the teams. So there's this overall feeling that maybe Johnston doesn't get drafted in the first round or is going to be sitting around for a while, and they don't want to have that Geno Smith disaster kind of.
Where he had to go buy new clothes.
Yeah, he had to come back the second day. I think he was like the first pick in the second round taken, but still, they don't want to have that where you have he's the only guy that doesn't get drafted that you invited to the NFL and drafted in the first round. So kind of playing off of that of maybe Johnston slipping. I actually think fantasy-wise, that's not a terrible thing because there's a string of teams that I think could possibly take him at the end of the draft, and that's like, the Cowboys, the Bengals, the Chiefs. These teams that are picking at the end of the draft could possibly be a really good spot for him. I chose the Bills. I think the Bills need another weapon. They have Diggs, and then it's kind of like, what else do they have? And I think you've seen it, that you need weapons on your team. You need multiple weapons. And we've seen it with the Packers for all those years where Rodgers was having MVP years and Devontae Adams was putting up crazy numbers. And then you get into the playoffs and teams know how to shut down a guy, and there's really no one else to throw to. And so Rodgers was kind of forcing it to Adams or just was not good in the playoffs. I think the Bills kind of see that as well with Diggs and who else? They have Gabe Davis, who didn't step up last year to what we thought. You have Khalil Shakir, who was a 5th-round pick. You have Dawson Knox, okay. You just don't have that second weapon. So I think if a guy like Quentin Johnston falls there, he could be that perfect complement to Diggs. Doesn't have to be the alpha, and kind of learn his first year, and then who knows what he turns into for Allen and the Bills later on. So kind of like that there, Johnston going there. So so we'll get into our tight ends. We're just going to go over one each. The consensus top 2 tight ends. Dad, I'll let you start. Michael Mayer.
Yeah, Michael Mayer. I actually got a couple spots for him to go to. One of them, first one is the Saints. I know the Saints is not picking until later in the first round. And will Michael Mayer make it that far? We don't know. But he definitely Saints have an okay wide receivers, and they need something that's gonna work the middle of the field, and Michael Mayer is obviously top 1-2 tight ends in the draft. Again, we don't usually see tight ends going in the first round, but this year, is an exception. The other team is, and I know I mentioned him for Jordan Addison, is the Chargers. So if the Chargers don't take a wide receiver, they definitely need, a tight end. So draft pick 21, that would kind of fit good spot for him, and that would definitely help the Chargers passing game. And so Saints or Chargers for Michael Mayer.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's kind of come out that the Chargers feel like they need another weapon for Herbert. And as a Chargers fan, I would agree. And so that basically seems like they're either going to take one in the first or second round, a tight end or receiver. And, this wide receiver class, not the strongest, so the tight end class is. So I think, and you just think about Kellen Moore's there, right? He was their offensive coordinator for Dallas for 3 years. And just look at what Dalton Schultz was putting up during that time. So obviously Kellen Moore, whether it's Kellen Moore or it was Dak, we don't know for sure. But obviously Kellen Moore liked the tight end position, right? And so I just think that's a perfect fit, in my opinion. I agree. I'm looking at Dalton Kincaid, who again is him and Michael Mayer are basically the consensus 2. And I like a spot for him that I like and that I didn't really think about until recently was the Packers. Packers are 15th, I believe, which is kind of the range where, the first tight end could possibly go. Kincaid was a pretty good pass catcher, one of the better, maybe the best pass catcher in this receiving tight end in this draft class. And Packers need weapons for Jordan Love. They have Christian Watson, and then they have Romeo Doubs. And okay, is he a wide receiver 2 or is he more like a wide receiver 3 type of player? We don't know yet. And then it's kind of they don't have anything else. So I think a tight end to the Packers makes a lot of sense. Tight ends are kind of especially young quarterbacks, they're best friends. And I just like that spot fantasy-wise because I could see Kincaid being the number 2 weapon on the Packers even as soon as this year. And that's kind of what you need for a fantasy-relevant tight end is to be either the first or second option on the team. So, I kind of like that Kincaid to the Packers. So, don't know what you think about that, Dad. But,
yeah, I think he would. Packers, they lost Robert Tonyan to free agency, and so they definitely need to fill the spot. So, either you could either say Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid would fit perfect to the Packers there at 15. It's just a matter, do the Packers want to spend that pick on there? So, kind of makes sense though.
Yeah, for sure. But that's all we're going to get to. That's kind of the top 10. I think basically all those players should be going, besides the quarterbacks, they should be like the top players being taken in your Dynasty rookie draft. So it'll be interesting to see where they land. We'll be back later this week. We're going to finish up looking at picks 111, 112. We're going to be, maybe going live after the draft each round and kind of reacting to where players go and what that does and changes for us in our rookie draft. So exciting time for us Dynasty players. But we're going to finish up there. And Dad, any last words or should we finish this up?
No, the draft starts at pick number 2. So whatever the Texans decide. So could really decide what everybody else is going to do. So should be interesting.
Sure. Yep, it will be. So as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I think we're at 129 subscribers. So hopefully we can get to about 200 by the time the season starts. That'd be awesome. But anyways, appreciate you guys, and we will catch you all